let me lend you in a funny joke, okay? Chimkin.
Ha! 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 Ha!
I'm not, I'm not laughing because of that. I'm laughing because of how terrible that laugh I made. That fake laugh I did. It's just so terrible. I'm not fake laughing. It's the fake laugh that I did that made me laugh. Oh, that sounded terrible. I'm almost 20, man. 1 month later, and I'm gonna be 20. This is how I'm behaving. Oh my goodness. It kind of explains why I'm single, honestly. You know what? I'm not gonna complain. Hello everyone. There's been a surprising amount of people that have voted for having me showcase my loadout, which is a very unusual thing that I don't think I was expecting. I'll be honest with you. This was something I was really not expecting to have because it's one of those things where it's just like, why do you want to know my loadout exactly? I have no idea, but either way, I'm not going to complain because you asked for it and I shall deliver. But either way, my loadout is something that it's not really particularly ready because I don't really have the necessary gear armor I have. And you might think, well, you have 1,200 hours. How is that possible? Well, it's mainly because, like, I used to be one of those people where they're only focused on one singular gear piece, and, now that I think about it, I probably should have grabbed more varieties, because I was always focused on one armor type. So, yeah, that is a problem on my hand, so whoopsie daisies, but either way, we're not going to dive too deep, as I'm going to try my best as to explain what type of loadout I have on my arsenal, if that makes sense. But either way, I'm going to show you what I bring mostly to the table with when it comes to weapons and as well as the accessories and consumables and as well as the armor type I have. Yes, there are like one or two varieties, but I will still explain what I have in my loadout. So, without wasting any more time, let's get straight into it, starting off with the tank. So, first up we have on the list is, like I said, the tank build. There really isn't much to be working with. My main weapon mainly consists of a shotgun and as well as an assault rifle, mainly because of how much damage they deal and as well as I focus on having a long weapon with me and a two-handed weapon. And for this one being the scope cutter, which is 1025 damage, and as well as the Taudi's Wrath. Those are the ones I mostly prefer to use, mainly because like long swords don't really, well, specifically katanas, they don't really bounce a lot often as bats and as well as basic swords. I don't really know why the game considers this a sword. Sure, it is a sword, but it's mostly katana, but then again, I don't want to sound like a fucking nerd here, so we're not going to jump deep into it. For modification wise, they mostly just use with the impact, mainly because of how much damage they deal, and that's pretty much it. I use the empowerment mod and with the Walking Dead memento because of the extra damage. For accessories, it's mostly just trying to keep myself alive as much as possible. The UV bar is mostly the one I will be using against the infected, and when it comes to human enemies, I just mostly stick around with the Carnage Manica. And one thing I should say is that I have a UV light and as well as a grappling hook on every single loadout. So keep that one in mind. For consumables, military medkit, medicine, endurance booster, and rage booster. Rage booster because I have so much resistance that it doesn't really practically matter at this point. Having the extra damage is going to be really necessary, especially when I'm fighting off against whole hordes of volatiles. Combining the 100% damage booster with the fucking scope cutter's damage, it's going to be terror for the fucking enemies because sure, the only complaint I could say about the muscle booster is that my initial movement speed is much more reduced, and as well as my vision is blurred. But that doesn't really affect me that much as a person. I don't really get motion sickness from it, so it doesn't really affect me. I could use the muscle booster, but then again, like only having 45 seconds of insta kill ability is already good enough. And for armor, there are actually three varieties I have. So, this one I have is just mostly about damage increase. This is the highest damage increase I can get. The only one I'm missing is on the Lieutenant Gloves and as well as the Heavy Boots. For Heavy Boots, I literally just need 0.01 damage increase, and for this one, I just need an additional 1% increase, and that's pretty much it. But what is the main focus of this? Well, high damage, so it's roughly around 79.4%, but if I'm not mistaken with my math, I think the maximum amount of damage increase I could get is like somewhere around 80.4, and that is total increased damage of, for this one being 2,864, and I think if I have the bonus 1% or the 1.1%, I think there's a chance I might reach like 200-900, but I think I'm asking for too much, but either way. For next one we have is the Taudi's Wrath, which deals around 2,157 damage, which is pretty good, and yada yada yada, you get the gist of it. But when am I using these weapons? Taudi's Wrath, I will just mainly use it for for human enemies and medium-sized targets like banshees, and as well as chargers, and sometimes on volatiles, but not really much. The scope cutters just mainly use it for bigger enemies, goons, demolishers, and maybe volatile or volatile tyrants, depending on if I'm fighting them in a huge number, and that's literally it. I also have another version of the armor set, which would be more primarily focusing on Knuckle Duster damage increase. But the weird part about this is the fact that despite the game showing me that I have approximately 64% damage increase on Knuckle Duster, it doesn't really show like how much damage boost I'm getting, much like how it shows on the other ones. Like, as you can see, 708 plus damage from gear bonus, but it doesn't say it for here. No, that doesn't necessarily mean that it does not affect it. I did test it and it does work, but the game doesn't really show you how much damage you're getting. Don't worry, the damage increase does exist, but it doesn't really show it. So if I want to be using with Knuckle Dusters, I can do that, but the only downside being is the fact that I'm losing a lot of damage increase on, you know, two-handed weapons. But then again, that doesn't really matter because they already give enough damage increase. Like, I got 69%. Nice. Wow, I'm an immature child. Anyway. The next one I have is probably my favorite, and is probably the most broken one, which consists of the Renegade Boss Mask, combined with the most amount of damage resistance I can get. And there it is. My highest damage resistance increase, which consists of 24.3 against human enemies, 28.4% against infected, but here's the thing. 32% bonus damage resistance during the day, and another additional 26.7 during the night, and these two stack together. And combined with the high gear armor value that these give together, and as well as the tank skill coming from the legendary skill damage increase, I take too much damage, or take less damage. Oh, it's supposed to be nighttime, but the game's bugged out, so. But yeah, no, this is on Nightmare difficulty, by the way. Normally, this would have killed me, if it was any other armor set. But, no. It takes like, maybe 5 hits for them to insta-kill me. You can literally see here that I can't fucking die unless, like, I actually give them the opportunity. Again, this is my favorite because of me being a complete fucking tank. And here it is, I'm not joking you. There it is, Nightmare difficulty. But because of how much resistance I have, it doesn't matter. It's just... For maximum survivability, this thing just comes into play. And if I combine it with the toughness booster, it literally is just kind of pointless. But now you know. The only downside being about this armor set is the fact that I'm losing a lot of damage increase on my two-handed weapons at the exchange of being the most unkillable fucking being in the game. And I am not over-exaggerating when I say that. Next up we have on the list is the good old Brawler set. Brawler, again, pretty easy. There's really not much special to this one, although the only complaint I can say about this one is the fact that I don't really have a lot of varieties. The varieties I'm trying to focus on with the Brawler is have two separate builds, one for tank and one for the highest damage increase, and that's literally it. I don't really have those that I want. The only ones I have is the fact that I have the highest damage increase, those being like 79.5%, and that's pretty much it. I mainly use like two weapons, those being a machete and as well as the axe. Axe is good for bigger enemies like volatiles, goons, and demolishers again, and because of the 15% damage increase on the infected, it's sort of a necessary for me to use. For the machete, it's mainly for human enemies and as well as medium-sized targets, banshees, chargers, you get the gist of it. And they mainly use like crowd control type of abilities, or like elemental effects, specifically being the machete mainly uses electricity because of how easy it is to inflict to other enemies, because for some of you that don't know, the electricity effect is probably the best in the game when it comes to applying its effect to multiple targets. If one person is affected by it, then it's guaranteed the fact that other enemies are also going to be affected by it. For axes, it's a combination of impact and as well as electricity, because impact because of high damage, electricity for crowd control, and as well as enforcer or the empowerment mod, and as well as the Walking Dead charm because of the extra damage. Basically high damage as much as possible, SMG for crowd control because of how much ammo it has in its magazine, and as well as a rifle just in case for emergency uses. Again, this build just primarily focuses on dealing high amounts of damage with having some bit of resistance, as you can see on the stat bags here. For axe, it deals around 2,158 damage. For the machete, it's like 2,133. Sure, it's not much of a difference, but look at the passive stat. Again, this one is better for infected, and this one is better for human enemies. They have their differences. And for accessories, I just mainly focus on having the boomstick and as well as the remote C4. Boomsticks just so I can deal more extra damage to human enemies and as well as knock them on the ground, and as well as pierce through their bashes. For consumables, it's mainly on regeneration booster or muscle booster because I could use the rage booster for the extra damage, but I want to be able to actually move around and do some more damage, and actually see. So I just mostly stick around with the muscle booster. And again, military medkit and basic medicine. There's really nothing special here. For medic, it's not really much difference. The only difference being is that it only has guns, because medic doesn't really have a set damage increase other than with parkour attacks. And I'm planning on having 3 different types of builds for the medic, those being the ones that mainly focuses on healing effectiveness, and the other one focusing on damage resistance, and the other one being focusing on damage increase on parkour attacks. Right now I'm trying to go for a mixture of all of those 3. As you can see here, I have a base damage increase on parkour attacks up to almost 60%, and some bit of damage increase on during the day and as well as on night. Keep in mind, this damage resistance works against everything. Human enemies, infected, poisonous effects, fire, whatever it is. If it hurts less. That is all I can pretty much say. And I'm kind of lazy to change the outfit to how I want. One thing you will notice is the fact that I try to make these characters look similar, with the white being the primary dominant color, if that makes sense in a way. So, yeah. Why is that the case? Well, that's mainly because I love winter and anything Arctic related, I am in love with it. So, yeah, I am a fucking nerd for those. For accessories, I mainly try to just use, like, throwing knife for good damage against, like, human enemies, and when it comes to infected, I just try to stick with the UV bar because I'm not really that resilient, so I need something to take care of me. And the only weapon I really have is a polearm because of its larger range than the two-handed weapons, and as well as stick with throwing knives because just in case if I want to pierce through their defenses a bit more effectively. But then again, parkour attacks exist. I don't think I really need to say much about this one. Finally we have is the archer. For this one, I try to just simply have a lot of ranged weapons as much as possible, but you might notice that I have the Bozak bow instead of a normal bow. And you might think, well, the damage increase is terrible, why would you be using a bow? Well, considering the fact that the bow is one of the worst weapons in the entire game, when it comes to, like, weapon categories being the ranged weapons, I don't use the Bozak bow for the sake of killing enemies. I use it for the sake of crowd control, specifically being with the shocking arrows. And you know how, like I said, it's really good when it comes to applying its effect to other enemies, and the only weapon I have in my arsenal would be the Knuckle dusters because of how quick they have on their attacks. I try to focus on fighting back in the distance as much as possible, but if they get too close, I have the Knuckle Duster with the crit mod, and because of how fast they are able to attack, it should be able to activate its effect much more quicker. But I hate relying on luck, but I want to make this look genuinely different as much as possible, even though I know it's going to fuck me over a lot. That was a terrible voice crack. Wow, I want to shoot myself. I have the exploding arrow just in case if I see a lot of groups of enemies, and then as I have shurikens because it deals more damage than the throwing knives if all of the shurikens hit. It's more like a shotgun pellet, the way that Aiden throws it. And I only use this if the enemies get a little bit too close. For consumables, I just use camouflage because in case if I'm in a situation where I know I'm not going to be able to get out, so I just use the camouflage grease, toughness booster so I can actually sustain more damage, and yada yada yada. For the armor, here is this. I don't have the highest amount of damage resistance, but the only ones I'm trying to focus on, or I want to have 2 different types of builds, is recognition time and as well as focus on having the highest damage increase. Recognition time sort of determines how quick enemies are able to detect you. Some people have said that this does work, some people have said that this doesn't really work. I don't know. Sometimes it did help, sometimes it didn't help. It's sort of a weird stat to say at least. But yeah, now you know. High damage, bow, or the crossbow, I just mainly use it for everything. For the Scorpio, I just mainly use it on medium-sized targets that I know are going to get killed with a singular shot. It deals 2,800 damage, and sadly it doesn't work with the Ranger, which is kind of depressing, but either way. For the Bozak bow, sure it deals the least amount of damage, but like I said, I just mainly use the bow for the sake of crowd control with the shock arrows. Sometimes explosive arrows work, but again, I don't really like using them because it knocks me on the ground a lot, and the explosion radius is huge. The crossbow, It's a crossbow. Do I really need to say anything specifically? Being the Shadow Executioner that I got it from the Halloween Tower Raid, which is very powerful because it deals additional bonus damage depending on the enemy's maximum health. And I also have the Knuckle Dusters because of its very fast attack speed in case the enemies get too close and personal, and yada yada yada. Anyway, now you know, my loadout is nothing special. Again, this is how I see it. Is this, like, the best? No, this is not really the best, but this is all I got. Again, I'm someone that has, like, 1,300 hours on the game, or 200 hours. I don't know, man. I'm getting old, man. I'm almost 20, man. God. Either way, I don't have much to say besides thank you for watching, I guess. I didn't want to make this video, but y'all asked for it, so yeah. I'm not saying I'm ungrateful, but it's just kind of weird that me showcasing, because I don't really like to showcase my stuff because a lot of people are going to assume that I'm doing this for the sake of, like, ego, I guess. It's like, oh, this guy's showing his loadout. That means he has a very big ego. He thinks like he's the best in the game, which I'm not. So, like, I'm not really special, to say at least. So, yeah. How do I close this video? I have no fucking idea. Anyway, I can't really think of a really dumb joke, but all I can say is, I do go funny stuff because cavemen like funny things because cavemen funny stuff. Anyway, I don't know. Take care of yourselves. I will see each and every one of you next time. Take care of each other, show some kindness to one another, love each other, do not be an asshole to one another, and as always, I will see all of you next time. Now, get out of my house, shoo.